Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are at the Grow stage at the Tech.eu Summit. My name is Dan Taylor. I am the managing editor at Tech.eu, and I am also the MC for today. Somehow I've been roped into keeping things on time and on track, which is what I'm aiming to do, and we're already 5 minutes late, so as you can imagine, I'm already sweating. So I'm not going to stand in the way because we have a tremendous amount of very, very, very interesting content to get through today. Now, as well, some are calling this the small stage. I'm calling this the intimate stage, where we can really dig into the heart of things. I mean, I can see every single one of your faces out there. Try doing that in that other place, right? Impossible, impossible. So let's get the show on the road. First up, we've got the man of the hour, founding editor Robin Wauters. He's standing right over there. Most of you know him. I know that's for me. You can applaud when he actually comes on the stage. There you go. Good. Where Robin is going to be leading a panel talking about diversity and inclusion from buzzwords to real action. Is that actually the case? Let's find out. Robin, come on up here. And you can bring the rest of your panelists with you. There you go.
Anna, Evie, Ladi, come over. Yeah, it's a topic that really, really resonates with me, so I do want to make an effort to really moderate this myself. We have live streaming and recording as well, so we're not calling the small stage at all, because it isn't. Anna, Evie, and Ladi.
Thank you.
Anna's the head of community at European Women in VC, and a lot more, but maybe you can do a better job than I can in describing who you are.
Well, I'm working every day for a very first fund in Europe, founded only by female, in Poland. So this is where the whole idea of trying to pursue the idea of diversity in venture market in our hats was born. Yes, and I'm leading the community of European women in VC, which actually we did not expect to grow so much in a recent year or two. We are publishing reports measuring all of those factors and all of those difficult, let's say, measurements to be taken in terms of diversity in the market, both from the top and the bottom. That means on the level of general partners and startups. And we are really working hard every day to build the network, help fund managers, female fund managers, and diverse fund managers to raise funds, and then to fund female-founded mixed teams on the startup level. So that's pretty much me.
Great. Well, speaking of funds focusing on female founders,
yeah.
Evie, that's a great segue for you.
Thank you. I, from Astia, for 20 years we have worked to level the investment playing field for companies that include women. Today, that means that we have 3 main investment activities, one of which is the Astia Fund, which I'm one of the founding managing partners for. That launched last January. All of our investment activity, obviously, we only consider companies that include at least one woman in a position of power, equity, and influence. I've been there for 14 years, so I will try not to be too cynical this morning and try to focus on some of the positives and the actions as well.
Thank you for joining. Is my mic on at all? Yeah.
No, I don't.
Ladi, last but not least.
Yes, Ladi Greenstreet, I'm CEO of Diversity VC, and Diversity VC is an action-orientated community where our members are advocating diversity, equity, and inclusion all across the VC ecosystem, so that we can create a world in which, a fair and more equal world where essentially there are no barriers to those who can make or receive investments, and hopefully find more women, more people of color, more of diversity and sexual orientation, all being able to access and also commit funds.
Great, and you forgot your day job. He's also in CVC. For great, well, let's dive right in. Different studies confirm there's no way around it anymore. I'm going to repeat the statistics you hear all the time because they're not changing. So that's already a point that I want to make. Roughly 1 to 2% of investment makes its way to women-founded startups. 1 to 2% depending on which region in Europe, which is abysmal. 5 to 6% goes to mixed gender founding teams, so at least one woman on the team. 92 to 94% goes to all male founding teams. Abysmal stats. And the worst thing about it is there's no sign of improvement. In fact, largely due to the pandemic, the numbers are going backwards, not just stagnating, but getting worse. Why is that? Like I keep asking the same question for years now. It's such a big problem in the European VC and entrepreneurship community. But maybe you have a better explanation than anyone who's gone before you. Why is that?
I can see you're looking at me.
Yes, sorry.
Well, looking at the problem, we found out together, discussing that for many years, that we have been looking at it at just one part of it. That's one of the problems, right? If we are not taking the holistic picture, if we are not taking every single part of the venture space, we are not going to fix the problem. So we have to remember where and how the capital flows, whom we have to educate, where do we have to place investment diverse teams, at what level in order to achieve the bottom, let's say, improvement, right? The market is growing, the numbers are horrible, and we are still stuck. And we cannot say that the market is not doing anything, right? Because we see a lot of acceleration programs, a lot of mentorship programs, everything that is focused on startups. It's okay, but it's still not enough. So if we're going to fix that, or if we want to fix that, we have to start from the top. We have to start from the LP level, improve the capital, the balanced capital flow to female-founded or female co-led, at least, fund manager teams and investment teams. So that's one.
That, of course, is a change that takes time. No way about it. Ladi, is that also something you see with Diversity VC? You have a lot of conversations with LPs as well, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So certainly on Diversity VC, we're trying to tackle the industry problems. So we are advocating diversity and equity inclusion across the industry, and that goes down from obviously the funds and the GPs themselves, and down to the founders to the grassroots level as well. But I think certainly one of the big areas is the LP level, which we're also trying to tackle next, because without that top-down approach as well, it's going to be very hard. But one of the exciting things we're seeing in terms of the changes is that we are starting to see different conversations happening, particularly when it comes to hiring within funds. We're starting to see people actually asking the question before being hired by a fund, what are their policies in diversity and inclusion. And similar founders, I had a great story just the other week of a founder who have an oversubscribed round, and they were saying, she was saying, what is your policy on diversity and inclusion before I take any money from you? So we're starting to see the pushes from other parts of the industry, but this is a holistic approach needs to be taken, and we certainly want to work with more governments on the policy level, on the LP level, to try and make sure that all angles are covered.
Evie, when I talk to fund managers, investors, it's the same with sustainability and ESG. Once you bring it up, there's never any negative sound. They're not going to say, oh, screw women, we don't invest in women. They always say, we do make an effort. And then you look at the numbers year after year and year after year, and it doesn't really change. So I'm always wondering what real efforts are being made versus how much of it is what I call diversity, well, not just me, but diversity theater, where essentially they claim to be diverse and inclusive, but they're really not.
Yeah, and when Astia was founded in San Francisco 20 years ago, the numbers in terms of venture capital that found its way to those inclusive teams was still woefully low. So let's try and focus on some of the positives. And you're right, there's lots of conversations, there's lots of mentoring, but what these companies need is investment. So it's on us and all the different elements of the ecosystem that Ladi highlighted, but particularly for us as GPs and investors to change the process. So capital doesn't flow across gender lines, as Anna was highlighting. So it's really on us to be intentional as investors to make sure that we're breaking down the process. The process clearly isn't working if that's the percentage of capital that's flowing year after year. As you rightly highlighted, last year it went down. And so we really need to be intentional. And it can flow from anything from that first introduction, that first meeting. It can be really harmful and damaging. So to being open to as much deal flow as possible and putting a stake in the ground and being intentional. I think there's a lot of excuses around the pipeline being the problem. At Astia, we never have a problem with the pipeline. I think it's the ecosystem that needs to change to find it.
It's one of these perceived problems that are not actually problems.
Not actually the problem, yeah.
If I may, just
Of
one
course.
comment to what you said, Robin. You said that when you ask fund managers, LPs, any players in the venture space, you get the answers on diversity data. Yeah, it's fine, it's wonderful. But you know what? That, for me, sort of creates a very, very difficult problem to be tackled. I've heard so many times that investing in women is impact, is charity, in quotation marks, but that's not. I mean, there are proven examples that female-founded venture firms perform much better. They focus on lower risk projects. Female-founded startups exit faster. They perform better on the dollar invested. I mean, that's not charity, but we're still stuck at thinking that, yes, this is a nice addition. It's a very nice picture to be added to our strategy. We call that pinkwashing. We're really not, you know.
Pinkwashing.
It is pinkwashing, absolutely. We get promotions, being just a pretty face on the website. We're getting all of that to really show that we are diverse. We are striving towards the ESG, but we are not looking at why we are actually doing that. This is a risk management. This is a high return. This is really an investment opportunity to be seeked. And we are still sort of dressing that up in those pretty pinky, kind of fluffy things, right, attached to women. And this is what we really have to fight in order to make a change.
Yeah, exactly. I was listening to Evie when you said, you know, the change is not really happening, at least in terms of the numbers. So I'm also thinking, if you're in the tech world, when you see a problem like that, you have to do radical solutions. Not like try and change a little bit, but really do radical things. So what have you seen in the market that really, really has a demonstrated effect, like a demonstrated impact? And this may be a question to Ladi as well, because you talk to a lot of VCs in London. Ladi, do you want to take this one?
Well, I mean, certainly what we're trying to do, right? We started 2016 with getting the data out there and then realizing that people were trying to ignore the problem, so we got the data and decided the problem was there. What we're trying to do next from our data point of view is then show that the real impact. So we've created our community. We focus on making sure that people within our community have the right resources, right, the education, but most importantly can assess themselves, right? So we've created the Diversity VC standard. So it's almost like an annual assessment to see how you're doing. And really important is not to focus on how many female founders have we funded, but actually to say, what have we done to try and create a better environment for attracting more female founders, right? And so we've created Diversity VC standard as a way of building that community and doing so. And so what we're starting to see over the last 18 months is good actions being put in place across HR policy, recruitment, hiring, a holistic approach to almost like diversity, inclusion, wellness, right? And culture. And we're starting to see that that's going to pay dividends in the future. So it's a holistic approach, but we're still, our North Star is seeing how do all those pieces put together then impact business performance directly and which ones do. So hold this space. We're going to be coming back with that in a couple of months' time, but it's certainly what we're starting to see.
Really looking forward to seeing how it evolves. Evie, did you have anything to add to that?
Oh, just, people holding their hands up when they have made mistakes or when they do get things wrong. I think it's not done very often in our industry in terms of being in the venture capital industry. There's investors across the globe now that hold their hands up, say, we've got it wrong and this is what we're doing to fix it. And for us, 20 years in the making, but we still found that our failure was investing in black CEOs at the point of investment. So our process was very fair to them, it included them, but yet when it came to the investment decision, that was our failure. So really tracking the data so you can analyze your failures and holding your hands up and then course correcting and trying the things to correct that. I don't think it happens enough and it should happen more to try and bring change.
Yeah, it's a a very good point, because I think oftentimes data is lacking, so the more data we can
Yeah.
have, the better solutions we'll be able to provide. You mentioned black CEOs. I was just going to say diversity and inclusion is much more than just gender, of course. What else can be done to ensure a level playing field? Also, people of color, immigrants, refugees, people without a university or college degree, ageism as well. Like if you're an older founder, it's not as easy as the young guys, and include people from difficult socioeconomic backgrounds and whatnot. The list goes on and on. So inclusive means inclusive of everyone. So what are some of the things that you see that are addressing this, not just the gender imbalance, but everything? Some initiatives that you think are worthwhile, might be a blueprint for other ecosystems to follow. Any specific concrete examples? Anna.
Well, any university, for me, actions, because we can start from the bottom, right? Any university actions. You mentioned people without education. You mentioned people lacking the opportunity to actually grow. So I would not be able to point out to any particular one, but I have actually came across a lot of university incentives, going out there, making a lot of effort to provide grants and to provide educational grants. I really look out for the talents, despite of any kind of standards that were assigned to high-level universities. So I think that we could really make a change, and that's creating sort of the starting point to turn the wheel, to sort of bring those people up.
Very good point. Start early in the process. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Evie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and start investing. When we looked at our own problem, we found that the most impactful thing we can do is invest, and alongside that, be an advocate for those entrepreneurs. So it's hard work. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort to get there. But I think those intentional investors, and there's many more, more and more funds coming to the market addressing the underrepresented founders. Ladi's founder being one example. I think the more capital we have at the table being deployed into those companies is the blueprint, because what we've found is that when you're investing, that's where you can make real change.
Ladi, any
Yeah,
final
I'd
thoughts?
love to say there's a silver bullet for it. There isn't. I mean, this is why one of the reasons that we act on the ecosystem is that we wanted there to be more diversity of the decision makers, to bring in diversity. So we created the Future VC program so we could get diverse folks from across all those areas that you mentioned into the decision-making rooms, and therefore put investments. But that's one part of the problem. Now we're doing some research to actually look at the fact that does necessarily having a black investment manager mean that you're going to have more diverse candidates? Anecdotally, I can tell you that's not true. I mean, and we've had discussions with this, like having more women in investment communities doesn't mean you're going to have more female founders coming through. In fact, sometimes, and I'm sure you can attest to this, that it's an even larger burden for someone of color or a female person to bring someone else in. And so this is why it's much more about a culture we're trying to create of inclusion, and this permeates through that entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so there's not one thing, but if I were to say something that can be done very easily is a referral program. Bringing referrals in and saying, please refer someone else. It's just a small thing that everyone can do and then implement across any organization, and tends to try and change the dial slowly, one step as an individual, one step at a time.
I see Dan is eyeballing me, and we are on a tight schedule, so we'll have to wrap up. But thank you so much for joining us, Ladi, Evie, and Anna, for sharing your insights with us. And all the best for the future, and enjoy the rest of the day as well.
Thank you.